Good morning, brothers and the occasional sister. I'll try and get through this video undisturbed. I'm at a friend's house, there's a few people moving around. I've just had breakfast and I haven't cleaned my teeth and I'm enjoying the fire. Earlier on this year I gave myself a challenge to go into the coast, or onto the coast, and into the bush along the coast. And that jacket hanging up there, that's my Mick Guard jacket, that was the only thing I really had to sleep in. I had all my clothes, I had my boots, and that jacket. So that was basically my bed at night. I took some traditional Maori tools, a chisel, a few bits and pieces, and the whole idea was to make a hut, to sleep in that, to build a boat, to make a fishing line, to make fire, to do everything with just, I was going to say what's around me. That's not quite true, because I didn't even use fishing line that I found on the beach. I only used things that I'd made myself, primitive tools basically, and I really struggled. In fact, it took 3 times before I got away. The first night I got stung by wasps and rained out. The second night I was exhausted and just pulled the pin, and on the third attempt I made it go. Excuse me a moment. Bye. Sorry about that, just saying goodbye to someone. So I was actually challenged beyond what I thought it would be. It was really hard. Every living moment of the day was spent surviving. From the moment the sun came up, I was up looking for food, doing things like cleaning clothes, gathering water, gathering firewood. Trying to get a fire going was just so hard, and I failed the first night. I ate shellfish, I ate fruit, I ate berries, I ate fish that I caught, but so much work went into it. And at the end of that 7 days, about 2 weeks later, I ended up in hospital twice, and it was a really good thing that I did that survival course, because I found out I actually had another disease. It lowered my whole system down, and that was over 3 months ago, so it's 5 months ago. So I've been on a journey the last few months to heal that disease, and it's going well. But the story's not about that. The story is about how today anxiety and depression are all modern day diseases. A lot of diseases are modern day. I mean, heart disease is a foodborne disease because we eat a lot of the wrong stuff. Cancer is. Diabetes type 2 is. There never used to be diabetes type 2, very rare. In Japan in 1958, there was only 18 men recorded dying of prostate cancer. We have over 600 to 700 men each year in New Zealand die of it, and thousands whose lives are affected by it and have surgery and lose their functions. There's so many diseases today, modern day diseases, and depression and anxiety are also modern day diseases, because for the simple fact, back in the day, like when you had to survive, and I'm only talking a couple of 100 years ago, you had no time. From the moment you woke in the morning, you had to think about where your food was coming from, whether you were hunting it, whether you were fishing it, whether you were harvesting it from your garden, whether you were foraging for it. But you also had to take care of things like find medicine and find the right plants to heal yourself when you had a disease. You had to think about the clothes you were wearing and maintaining it. There weren't washing machines, there weren't fridges. All these modern day conveniences meant you had to do everything non-stop, and you did it as a team. You couldn't do it alone. And the woman would constantly be like tending the fires and feeding the children, and the men would be either keeping other men away or going out hunting or building something, fixing something. There wasn't time in a day to sit around going, oh, this thought, I wish I could stop it, or I feel really anxious about. You had no time for that. So what we've got today in Western society is we've got too much luxury time, too much time to just sit around and ponder, and a lot of us end up pondering the wrong stuff. Idle mind is the devil's playground, and I'm not saying that mental illness could be healed by going back to the Middle Ages. What I'm saying is, when you're in survival mode and you're just trying to live from day to day, there is just no place for that type of thinking. we wouldn't have evolved to this point and survived to this point if those mental diseases, which take a lot of people today, were prevalent back then. We have a high rate of suicide. We have a high rate of mental illness in New Zealand, and it's scary, really. And I think about countries like the really, really poor countries, Jakarta and Sierra Leone, and places where people are really struggling. And I wonder if they have the same rate of depression and anxiety and just mental illness overall as we do. I would imagine that they don't, because they're so busy trying to survive. They haven't got time to sit around and go down the dark alleys of their minds and become unwell. If you are suffering from any sort of unwellness of the mind, whatever it is, one thing I think certainly helps, or at least has helped me when I've had dark periods in my life, is to be active. I'm very fortunate as I don't suffer depression. Even when the worst things happen, I seem to get through okay, but I can imagine that it's the most debilitating thing in the world that stops the world from moving, and then you can't do anything. I know so many men that have it and struggle with it, and I think it must be, I have actually had it. I had it induced years ago. Dr. Blackmore in Christchurch gave me cortisol for hay fever, and it created it, and it was a really valuable lesson for me. I couldn't imagine being like that all the time. But also, I really wonder, the people that do get depressed, I really wonder if some of it, not all of it, but some of it is also triggered by just having copious amounts of free time to do nothing, where you don't have to struggle to survive, where you're in a house that's warm, where you've got a fire behind you or a heater that's keeping you warm, where you've got food that you can get, where everything's at your fingertips, where you're actually not having just to fight to live day by day. I wonder about that. And I'm not discounting these illnesses that we have, but I just think today it's become more of a modern day illness. I don't think it would have been around as much back in the day. That's my thoughts on it, and I'm quite prepared to be wrong too. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. And if you're someone that suffers depression, share, if you don't mind, share with us the things that have made it worse, and how difficult has it been for you to motivate when you are in that state of mind. And also, please bring to the table something that's useful for brothers watching this that do suffer depression. Please bring something to the table that you've found which helps. I talk about depression because it comes up a lot, and I have a lot of people email me and say to me, "Oh, I've got the black dog right now, bro," and I think, shit. Even with all the disease that I've had, and I've had a lot of disease, I've never had that, and it's I don't really draw much difference between unwellness and unwellness, whatever it is. I think you get sick, it just manifests in different ways, and I'm pretty certain that the cancer that I got was also manifested from this modern age living. Sex, drugs and rock and roll, baby. Too much of the good life, too much whiskey, too much rich food, too much that hedonistic life. Or maybe it was just bad luck. I don't know. But I do know that there's a lot of countries that don't have it. An interesting country on the Mexico border, northern Mexico, the Tarahura. They live on a diet of squash, corn and beans, and the only protein they get is a little bit of field mice they gather from time to time. They smoke, and these guys, they run barefoot everywhere. I read a really good book because I used to be a barefoot runner, and these guys, they live till they're 100. A lot of them it's a blue zone. They make 100 years old, and they just run everywhere. And a lot of them smoke, and it's incredible. But they all and they have this really limited diet, and maybe it's the diet, I don't know, or maybe it's the sense of community that they have. Where else do people live? What's another blue zone where people live for a long, long time? Central China. Mostly they live on vegetables and a little bit of fruit, and they get minimal meat because they can't, it's just out of their range. And there's a really interesting book called The China Study, And these people live to 100 years old. Whereabouts else do people live in a blue zone where they don't suffer the modern day diseases? Modern day diseases like cardiovascular disease, a Western society disease. Whereabouts is that? It's a place in Japan, I know, one of those islands, I forget the name of it, one of those places where the traditional Japanese diet, which is mostly a little bit of fish, lots of seaweed, lots of vegetables and rice. So, but I don't think it's just the one thing. I don't think you can just say diet. I think there's all sorts of things that lead us to get disease. I think it's trauma in our childhood. I think it's the chemicals that we put into our body, and I think it's the thoughts that we have that make us ill as well. I think there's a lot to be said about all things. And they are the three things really that bring disease. It's trauma, chemical imbalance, and thought processes. And in Western society, well, we have all the time in the world for the thought because we're so freed up with our time, we don't always allocate it in the wisest way. My advice would be, if you've got free time, don't think about allocating it to yourself. Think about allocating it as a service to somebody else in your local community around. If you've got freed up time, see that old lady's firewood that needs to be stacked, or see that young man that doesn't have a dad and go kick a ball with them in the field and just hang out, or see that person that's struggling with their groceries. Always do something for other people, and this will free up your free time so it becomes of value to this world. And by the end of your day, you'll feel like you put value in the world, and you'll feel a whole lot better. Every day I do something small. It could be the smallest thing. It might be just pick up some rubbish on the side of the road. It doesn't have to be much. I make sure that at the end of the day when I go to bed, I'm lying in bed, I can think that I've put value to somewhere else. And it doesn't have to be anything anybody else sees. The only person that needs to know about it is that you did it. In fact, better off to do it quietly. For years and years, I took young boys out hunting that didn't have dads. One of the very first ones was young Patrick. He's in his 30s now, and he was 11 when I took him out. And it even goes back before him, but this is long before YouTube was around, and nobody even knew I did it, and nobody needed to know that I did it, because the only person that needed to know that I did it was me. And the reason I did it was because I grew up without a father being around. My dad played no part in my life at all. He was just one of those dads that wasn't there, and our parents broke up when I was 10 anyway. And I really, really missed having a father at that young age, particularly the age of 12, 13 and 14. And so when I see young men struggling in my community, I knew exactly how they felt. Hell, I was living under the Motueka Bridge when I was a teenager. That's where my home was. I'd left home when I was 15, and I knew what it was like. So I'd see these young men, and I'd think, I know what it's like. I'm going to help you out. And a lot of those young men today, it made a big difference. Massive difference. I talk to them regularly now as men, and my sole reason to do that was because of the empathy I had, because I'd suffered myself not having a father. And it's a wonderful feeling when you get to my age and you know that your time is short and you're not here for long, that you've left something behind that's worthwhile, that's made other people's lives better. It makes the journey worth it. On my deathbed, on my last breath, when I look back, I'm not going to look back and go, all the money I made, or all the things that I built, or the pigs that I slayed. I might think a few of them, but the real thing I'm going to look back on is the people whose lives that I touched, and they touched me. They reached out to me, and I reached out to them. And I don't want to look back and have ever that thought, I could have helped that person and I didn't. I think that'd be the worst thing, to be in your last days and have regret that there was somebody who needed your help and you refused them. If you were that selfish to look back, I think that would be the poorest feeling you could have in yourself. And through suffering, we learn empathy. And with empathy, we rebuild. Where there's hurt, we heal. And we can really, really, most of the time, only do it when we've some way, in some sort of fashion, suffered ourselves. And I suffered as a child. I suffered not having a father around. And a boy needs a father. My mother was very loving, but yeah, it wasn't a great childhood for me, if I'm brutally honest. But from it, I learned to be a good father. I learned to be a good father to my own children, to not make the same mistakes. And I also learned to help a lot of people in my community. And I never did it for anything other than for that feeling inside that I want to heal something which wasn't healed in me. And I did, and I've achieved it, and I've got lots of wonderful memories of, I can see so many smiles of so many young men I've taken on the hill, gotten their first pig or caught their first fish. Hell, my nephew that I lost not long ago, I got him his first everything, his first rabbit, his first pig, his first kahawai, taught him how to light fire, taught him how to tie knots, did everything. Tragically, he drowned, but anyway, I did the best I could do, and that's the best we could all do, and that comes from your own suffering. In later years, after being a musician, I became a YouTuber because I damaged my right arm in a hunting accident. I couldn't play long concerts anymore, and I started filming what I was doing as just part of my normal life. And I soon learned that there's a lot of people in my community that is the same as me. Thousands, hundreds of unsung heroes you don't see. The women that give up their weekends to teach netball, basketball, hockey, swimming, all sorts of stuff. The men that give up their time to coach rugby and soccer and all the sport, and the scout leaders, and so many people do boxing for nothing other than to see young men, young women get ahead. That's what it's all about. It's about sharing. So these modern day diseases, whilst they're here and we live with them, and I live with my disease and you might live with your disease, I also think that it's really important that we make sure that we keep the wheels turning. We keep on doing something that adds value around us. And I think in that way we can also heal to a large degree. I think community is a huge part of healing, and embracing a community and being selfless. Because when you're selfish, you go all tight inside and you try to hold on to everything, and in the end you lose everything. Because ultimately we lose everything in life at the end anyway. And we go through this life completely alone. We're born alone, naked, and we die alone, naked. Oh, they can put clothes on your body, but you're still, there's nothing left. So you ain't going to take it with you. So don't try and hold on to it so tight while you're here, because it all goes in the end anyway. Life is about loss. And that might sound negative, but it's true. Eventually, you lose life itself. You lose friends, you lose possessions, you lose things that you held dear to yourself, and letting those things go and moving forward in life and seeing it as a journey moving forward is the only way to go. To try and hold on to everything, you become tight-fisted and miserable, and it won't serve you any good. To be free and not be a slave, not be a little bitch-ass slave to all these things in life that capture us. I can remember as a kid getting a new pair of shoes. We were a very poor family, and mum and dad split up, so we lived on an income what dad could send us, which wasn't much. Mum went on a domestic purpose benefit back then, and dad contributed to that, but it was just not enough money. And I remember getting a new pair of shoes and spitting and polishing them, and I had them on the bed at the end of the bed, looking at them, thinking in the night, getting up and have a wee look, in the morning looking at them, just love these new shoes. And I wore them to school for the first day. I'd always had second-hand fucking horrible shoes with holes in, and I was so proud of my shoes. And one kid scuffed and kicked them in the playground by mistake, and I lost it, man. I absolutely lost it, because he'd buggered up my shoes. And very soon I realised that there was no way I was going to better protect those shoes, and they soon become old shoes after a year. And after a period of time, I just gave up caring about them and gave them a polish out of a chore, and didn't really. When I first got them, it was so amazing. And the lesson in that there is that everything eventually becomes old. So yeah, you might as well face the fact sooner or later. Hell, the phone I'm holding right now, it's a brand new Galaxy S22 Ultra, and it's only 3 months old, and it's my second one already. I got the last one broken on Friday night. I was out with Damo, and we were sitting there, and the dog from next door, Murray's dog, came over, and Poe chased after it, and I chased after Poe, to catch her, and the bloody phone jumped out of my pocket and smashed on the ground. And it was 5 o'clock at night, so I went all the way to Noel Leeming and quickly bought another one, because I have to have a phone. It's one thing I run my whole business and my whole life on the phone, even before the insurance company could pay out. I couldn't afford it because they're bloody expensive, and bought another one straight away. And I looked at the broken phone and went, yep, everything gets lost eventually, or damaged or destroyed. Anyway, modern day diseases, they are with us today, and I think the best way to combat them for me is to keep on moving forward and doing something. That's how I cope, and I'm also proactive at making sure I'm getting rid of the causation of whatever disease it is I've got, whatever it is, and dealing with it head on. The three things that cause disease: trauma, chemical imbalance, and thought processes. I check all those three things, and I make sure that if I can't do anything about the trauma, at least I own it and try to, as best I can in my subconscious, put it in a place where it feels comfortable. And there's a lot of techniques you can research on how to do that, whether it's hypnosis, emotional freedom technique, or just group therapy, talking about it with people, really good. The chemicals, well, I don't drink anymore, I don't smoke the electric broccoli anymore, I don't take any of the drugs I used to take, and the big one, of course, is the food. I've changed the food drastically, so I'm on a high nutritional diet. And the third one is the thoughts, and for that I play music for my thoughts. That helps me. I express myself like I am to you guys now, and I have conversations with good people. And when I'm alone at night, while I sleep, and when I wake, I breathe through my nose, meditate a little bit, practice gratitude for waking up in the morning, because surely the morning will come when I don't. And that's how I manage my modern day diseases. But we all have some form of a modern day disease, and whatever yours is, I hope you are able to check on it and put it in its rightful place and take control of it so it doesn't take control of you. Hey brothers, it's the Bro Chick Club. I've been talking in front of the fire now for 22 minutes. I'm going to finish my drink. I hope you enjoyed this little chat. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one. Go steady, check on yourself, and check on a brother. See you later.